Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're venturing into the world of American organized crime. We're going to dissect the history of the Cleveland crime family.
That's right, also known as the Scalish family, sometimes just the Cleveland Mafia.
Exactly. We've got a pretty comprehensive overview as our source, and we really want to pinpoint the key moments, the big players, and, what led to their rise and eventually their fall.
It's quite a story. What's really striking is just how long this family operated. I mean, from the early stirrings around 1900 right up to their, let's say, diminished state today.
It really mirrors the bigger picture of organized crime in the U.S., doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's dive into those origins. Our source suggests the first signs were around 1900, these sort of basic black hand extortion rackets in Cleveland.
Yeah, pretty rudimentary stuff back then. And interestingly, the police even formed a specific Italian squad to deal with it.
And apparently they were pretty effective suppressing most of it by 1906, but that wasn't the end of it.
Not by a long shot. The 1910s saw things bubble up again. You had these looser Italian-American gangs emerging.
Like the Mayfield Road Mob.
Exactly. Maybe focused on things like auto theft initially. Angelo Serra was supposedly involved there, maybe pulling in, what, $500,000 a year? Huge money for the time.
Wow, and there were others too?
Oh, yeah. The Collinwood crew, Dominic Benigno, had his own gang doing payroll robberies. Even a less defined group called the Reservoir Gang. These were kind of the seeds.
Yeah, the building blocks.
Yeah.
And then the big one, Prohibition hits around 1920.
That changes everything. Suddenly you see loads of small gangs getting into bootlegging. Our source even mentions Jewish gangs in an area they called Little Hollywood.
Little Hollywood, huh?
Yep. And at the same time, the bigger Italian-American gangs, especially around Woodland Avenue, started to get more organized. The Mayfield Road Mob definitely jumped into bootlegging big time.
It was just too profitable to ignore, I guess.
It was a massive catalyst. Prohibition basically funded the expansion of organized crime across the country, and Cleveland was right there in the mix. It's interesting how these different groups operated side by side initially, a bit fragmented before things got more centralized.
Okay, so let's bring in the Leonardos and the Pirellos. Key names, right?
Huge names. Immigrants from Sicily, started legit apparently, but then shifted into, well, crime, robbery, extortion.
And there were quite a few of them. 4 Leonardo brothers, Joseph, Big Joe, Frank, John, Dominic.
And 7 Pirello brothers. Rosario, Vincenzo, Angelo, Joseph, John, Ottavio, Raymond. That's a force right there.
Sounds like a family business in a way.
You could say that. And around the early 1920s, Big Joe Leonardo emerges as the first real boss.
With Joseph Pirello as his number 2, his lieutenant.
Right, so now you're seeing a more formal structure take shape.
Mm-hmm.
But things didn't stay peaceful for long.
No. By 1926, the Pirellos split off, set up their own operation on Upper Woodland Avenue.
And the big fight was over corn sugar, wasn't it?
Yeah, essential for making bootleg booze. Sounds like a classic turf war brewing.
Absolutely classic. And it got violent fast. 1927, things really boil over.
The Leonardo murders.
Mm-hmm. Big Joe Leonardo and his brother John, they go to this meeting, supposedly a peace summit.
At a barbershop owned by the Pirellos.
And bam, ambushed, killed, just like that. Brutal. And it shows you how they settle disputes.
So just like that, Joseph Pirello takes the top spot, becomes the main guy in corn sugar.
He's the boss now. But the Leonardo loyalists, they weren't just going to roll over. The Mayfield Road Mob, their Jewish allies, the fight wasn't over.
And gambling became another battleground.
Yeah, another key racket. The power struggle just kept going.
So Pirello tries to solidify his position. What was that about the Statler Hotel summit in 28?
Right, he tries to get national recognition, calls this big mafia meeting in Cleveland. Kind of ironic, really.
How so?
Well, this supposedly secret meeting gets raided by the cops. Chaos, arrests, but weirdly, it kind of worked. He did get recognized as the boss by some important figures afterwards.
Huh. But that recognition didn't last long. By 1930, the Mayfield Road Mob is really gaining strength.
And the violence just keeps escalating. More Pirellos and their guys getting kills or switching sides. Then Joseph Pirello himself.
It's murdered in a restaurant owned by Frank Milano, his rival.
Exactly. His brother Vincenzo Jim takes over briefly, but nope, he gets killed too. Raymond Pirello's house gets bombed. It was just relentless.
A really bloody, unstable period.
Absolute brutal. Just shows the ruthless fight for control. And out of all that chaos, Frank Milano emerges. He's got the Mayfield Road Mob behind him, and they become the dominant mafia group in Cleveland.
And Milano wasn't just thinking locally, was he?
Not at all. Our source says by 1931, he's part of the National Crime Syndicate, even a charter member of the commission.
So one of the top bosses in the whole country. That's a big step up for Cleveland.
Huge step. Being on the commission gave him and the Cleveland family serious clout. Protection, connections to other big families, opened up a lot of doors for bigger operations.
And he uses that power to clean house, right? Takes out the rest of the Perellos in 32.
Raymond and Rosario Perello orchestrates their murders. That was pretty much the end of the Perello faction. The ones left alive got out of town. Smart move.
But Milano doesn't last forever either. Tax evasion catches up with him.
Yep, the classic downfall. He flees to Mexico in 35 to avoid charges.
So who takes over then?
Alfred Polisi steps up, also from the Mayfield Road mob. He holds things down until 1944.
Let me guess. Tax evasion.
You got it. Convicted. Seems the IRS was a pretty effective mob buster back then.
We should also mention the Collinwood crew, or the Young Turks. Guys like Ali Khan Calabrese, Joey Luce, Lakabachi.
Right, they controlled their own turf in Collinwood. Sometimes worked with the Mayfield Road mob, sometimes maybe bits separate. It shows there were different power centers even within the family.
Definitely adds complexity. Okay, so 1944, Polisi's out, and in steps John Scalish.
And this is a major shift. Scalish's reign lasts all the way to 1976. Longest ever for a Cleveland boss.
And this was the peak, wasn't it? The family really flourished under him.
Absolutely the zenith. Scalish was smart. He built connections everywhere, Lansky, Mo Dowlitz, Shondor Burns locally, but also big ties to the Chicago outfit, the Genovese in New York.
Their influence spread way beyond Cleveland. Midwest, California, Florida, Las Vegas.
Vegas was huge for them. They helped finance the Desert Inn, got a piece of the action for protection. That shows serious reach.
And the family itself grew. Source says maybe 60 made men in the 50s.
Yeah, around 60 full members. That's a decent size. Shows the strength of the organization at the time.
And the Teamsters connection, that was massive too.
Oh, absolutely critical. They got deep into the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, the IBT, labor racketeering, skimming cash from Vegas casinos, especially through the Central States Pension Fund.
That pension fund was like a private bank for the Mafia, wasn't it?
Pretty much. A huge source of money for Cleveland and other families. Let them fund all sorts of things. Look almost legitimate sometimes.
They even had deals with other families, sharing rackets in Youngstown with Pittsburgh, collecting protection money elsewhere.
Yeah, they had arrangements. Got a piece of Youngstown, took protection from casinos in western PA, northern Kentucky. They had a wide net.
But then something changed in the 70s. Scalish stopped making new members.
Yeah, that's what the source indicates. He chose not to bring new blood in. Why? Hard to say for sure. Maybe fear of informants, wanting to keep the circle tight.
Whatever the reason, it probably weakened them long term, right? Fewer numbers.
Definitely seems like it set the stage for future problems.
Yes.
Less manpower, maybe less adaptability.
And those problems hit hard when Scalish died unexpectedly in 76, during surgery no less.
And crucially, he hadn't named a successor. That created a power vacuum, a real crisis.
James Jack White Lucavoli eventually takes over, but his leadership is challenged almost immediately.
Right, by Danny Green, the Irish mobster.
Now this is where things get really explosive. Green wasn't Mafia, but he wanted to take over their rackets in Cleveland.
A major external threat. Green was ambitious, tough, and he wasn't afraid to start a war, which he did.
And he wasn't alone, was he? He partnered with John Nardi.
Yeah, John Nardi.
Yeah.
A disgruntled Mafia associate himself and, ironically, the nephew of Anthony Milano, Frank Milano's brother. He even helped Green kill Licavoli's underboss, Leo Museri.
So the late 70s in Cleveland, just bombs going off everywhere.
He was insane. The source mentions nearly 40 car bombings. Imagine living in the city then. Just constant violence, very public.
Nardi himself gets killed by a car bomb in 77.
Yep. The violence was hitting both sides hard, and it drew massive attention from the feds and local police. Never good for business.
Licavoli's crew tried to get Green multiple times, failed.
Until they brought in an outsider, a hitman named Ray Ferrito.
And Frito finally gets the job done in October 77, kills Green with a car bomb outside his dentist's office.
A major victory for Licavoli, you'd think, but it backfired spectacularly.
How so?
There was a witness, Debbie Spoth. She saw enough to help identify Ferrito. And Ferrito, probably fearing Licavoli would silence him.
He flipped, became a state's witness.
Bingo. And that was huge. His testimony brought down Licavoli and a lot of the top guys in the Cleveland family. A massive blow.
And the hits just kept coming for them, didn't they? The plot to kill the mayor, Dennis Kucinich.
Yeah. Uncovered in 78, Then a bloody war with the Pittsburgh family over Youngstown.
Resulting in more murders and Cleveland losing control of those rackets.
Exactly. Pittsburgh essentially won that war after key Cleveland guys like Charlie Carabia and Joe DeRose just disappeared. More weakening, more lost territory and income.
It really feels like they're just crumbling at this point. Licavoli gets locked up in the early 80s on RGO charges.
Right. The RICO Act was a game changer for prosecuting organized crime. Licavoli goes down for the Green murder fallout.
And Angelo Leonardo takes over, son of Big Joe, the original boss.
A Leonardo back in charge. But his reign was short. He gets convicted for drug trafficking in '84, gets life.
And then does something unthinkable.
Unprecedented, really. In 1983, while facing that life sentence, Angelo Leonardo becomes a government informant, the highest-ranking mafia guy ever to turn state's witness at that time.
Wow. The impact must have been devastating.
Seismic. Absolutely seismic. The information he gave the feds crippled not just what was left of Cleveland, but hit mafia families all over the country. It broke the code of silence, omerta, in a huge way.
So after Leonardo flips, who's left?
Well, John Peanuts Frontalone steps in around '85. He was more of a South Florida guy connected to the Genovese family.
Doesn't sound like a recipe for stability.
It wasn't. His tenure was short. Busted in an undercover sting in '89, died in '91 before he could even serve his time. Just shows the complete disarray.
And the 90s just saw more decline, law enforcement hammering them.
Relentless pressure. Our source says by 1990, there basically weren't any made members left on the street. They lost their Teamsters influence too, which cut off a major money supply.
Anthony Tony Liberator tried to hold things together.
Briefly, yeah. But he ended up in prison too by '93. It really looked like the end. Game over for the Cleveland Mafia.
It really did. But then, a slight twist.
A bit of one. Mid-90s, a couple of guys Leonardo had actually inducted, Joseph Joe Luce, Jacobacci, and Russell R.J. Papalardo, they start to emerge.
Jacobacci gets jailed for bank fraud pretty quickly, though. Papalardo becomes acting boss.
Right. But surprisingly, the source suggests they actually tried to rebuild things in the 21st century.
Seriously, after all that.
Shows resilience, I guess. Or maybe just the nature of the beast. Jacobacci reportedly started making connections again. Chicago outfit, Detroit partnership, even the De Cavalcantes in Jersey, trying to oversee rackets in different cities.
But the informant problem didn't go away. This guy, Anthony Del Monte.
Yeah, connected to the Bonanno family, but he turned informant for the FBI in the late 90s, early 2000s. Gave up a lot of info, led to more convictions. It's just a constant threat.
So what happened with Jacobacci and Papalardo?
Reports say Jacobacci eventually retired, maybe ceded some ground to the Chicago outfit. Papalardo seems to have become the recognized boss after that.
And the current status, as of, say, 2020.
Described as pretty small scale, mostly old-timers, bookies, and loan sharks. Not much formal structure left. A shadow of his former self, really.
It's a dramatic fall. So looking back at this whole story, what does it tell us?
Well, you really see the whole arc, don't you? From these small-time extortion rackets
To becoming a major national player, influencing unions, casinos.
and then just getting torn apart. Internal wars, guys like Danny Green challenging them, and constant pressure from law enforcement. The Leonardo betrayal was huge, too.
It really shows that cycle, doesn't it? Power, consolidation, then fragmentation and decline.
Absolutely. And the people involved, Big Joe Leonardo, the Pirellos, Milano, Scalish, Licavoli, Green. The informants, it's a vivid, often brutal picture of ambition and the consequences of that life.
You think about those big events, too. Prohibition giving them their start. Vegas giving them a gold mine. The gang wars tearing them down.
Yeah, those wider forces definitely shaped their path. And seeing them so diminished today, it makes you wonder about organized crime now. How has it changed? Has it just adapted, gone underground in different ways?
Definitely leaves you with a lot to think about. A fascinating, if violent, slice of American history.